Welcome to the Hiring Chronicles. Whether you're watching or listening, we're thrilled you're here with Amy and myself. We're an independent podcast, no ties to smart recruiters or anyone else. So there's no corporate jargon, just real talk. And despite the rumours, we're not perfect. So please ignore our good looks and charm and take our advice at your own risk. And let's dive in. Well, welcome back to the Hiring Chronicles. As a reminder, Amy, where can people find us?
They can find us on all social media channels, YouTube, LinkedIn. I was going to say Instagram and TikTok, but we just need to build that up a little bit. But we're there.
I'm just going to throw it out there that TikTok, I'm having a bit of a mare, if I'm honest.
I love it when a Gen Z has to think about social media channels.
Yeah. Like,
why? What's wrong with TikTok, or is it the user of TikTok?
I think if I say what's wrong with TikTok, then TikTok might come for me. So let's move on from that. Anyway, we're back, and as part of our new strategy, we're doing a part 1 and a part 2, this time with a young gentleman called Jeremy, and we're going to learn about his story. Currently running a business called Udder, which we're going to learn about in part 2. But I want to delve into Jeremy's work. He's done some pretty amazing stuff in both Romania and Ukraine that I'm interested to hear about. Maybe some scary stories in there I don't know.
Please don't make us cry, though.
Listen, you can cry as much as you like. I can take you one way or the other with those stories.
On that note, welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thank you. And first and foremost, number 40. If anyone's ever in Barnes, near Barnes Bridge, number 40 is excellent. Thank you for that recommendation for lunch.
It is our little spot, isn't it?
The number 40 cafe, lovely eggs Benedict.
Yeah.
Amazing hot chocolate.
And for me, it was the pesto chicken club sandwich with the grilled Mediterranean vegetables, superb, and the exotic vegan smoothie. I'm not vegan, clearly, because the first bit had chicken in it.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, I was like, what?
but it was absolutely superb. A really, really good recommendation. So thank you, guys.
And we normally complain about being in the middle of nowhere in Barnes Bridge, don't we? But
yeah, we do.
Number 40. We're not sponsored by them yet, but yeah, fair play.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you were settled and you had a nice little sandwich.
Yeah, indeed.
And so, Jeremy, we do the thing where we look at you from a social media profile background, and we look at what's Jeremy listed and what's he done. And I noticed that, and people might not know this about me, but I was born in Bournemouth. I'm class myself as a dirty mank now, but I noticed you went to Bournemouth University, you studied law. Yep. You then moved on into Marks and Spencer's in recruitment. You did some stuff in Romania with charity work, and it's like,
you go from law to recruitment.
What happened, Jeremy? Tell us your story.
What happened?
Pre Marks and Spencer's 1995. Let's go pre that.
Let's go dig deep in the memory there. I think back then things were very different as to what they are now. I was having a conversation around this earlier today. The whole career aspect, the whole piece around your career was much more. There were less places you could go with a career. I think I came out of school. I had conversations with my stepfather and things. What could I do? And I think I almost centred on law as a career. If you want to do law as a career, the best advice I can give you is do not do a law degree. It is the quickest way to put you off doing law as a career.
But don't you need a law degree in law?
Well, surprisingly, no.
Unless you're Kim Kardashian, actually.
Well, yeah. Then you just go into reality TV and that's another day.
Is she?
Don't come at me from dissing the Kardashians. Let me tell you both of you.
I can't.
I'm in a house with two. My daughters are 22 and 19, and at least one of them is a massive Kardashian fan. So I'm used to her throwing it back at me.
She sounds like a lovely lady.
She is. Funnily enough, going into law, but not studying law at university, learning from her father for a change. Yeah. You don't have to do a law degree. There are conversions you do, and if you go off and do something that's quite academic, so history, English. I mean, she's doing history and international development. So something like that. The law firms actually now are looking at you, going, "You've done something different," and then you convert on the law degree, on the law course, and you basically focus on the bits of law that you want to do. So
But you qualified and passed.
No.
You
I
didn't.
I did a law degree, and I focused on a business law degree, and actually the step into M&S, which was actually they called it personnel back then, was actually on the back of doing a module on my law degree, business law degree, which was the law and practice of employment relations. So basically personnel. But a great lecturer, Jim Cork, who was then the chair of the Bournemouth and Paul Tribunal, and yeah, it just took us to places with that module that I was like, actually, this looks quite good. Little did I know, but there we go.
But is that where you mentioned your stepfather and you having the discussions with him?
Yeah.
Like, was it those conversations that molded you into going into law then? Like, or where did it stem from? Like, what's deeper rooted? Because it's a very specific subject to go into.
Yeah, I did study at A-level. So
right.
I had a year out, studied at A-level. There was a potential to be sponsored by a company that I was working for, the Prudential. I was working in their law department during a couple of years out before I decided to go to uni. There was a potential for them to sponsor me through a day release, essentially, degree.
Okay.
But the role got made redundant. There was all sorts of things going on with the financial services sector, and yeah, it didn't happen. So I kind of stepped back from it all and went, well, I've got to do this by myself then. Bournemouth accepted me because they're nice, and as you'll know, it's a great place. I was there as a kid with my grandparents being just up the road, and it was lovely going back to places that I built sandcastles, essentially.
To be
You don't talk about it that fondly.
first rule about Bournemouth: don't talk about Bournemouth. No, it's not that I'm not fond of it. It's an absolutely stunning town.
Yeah.
But when I was there, you went to die in Bournemouth. It was just bowling greens and nursing homes was when I was there.
Yeah.
Now it's way
there
more
were
vibrant.
language schools as well.
Yeah,
that
language
was what
schools
kept
and
the town going really for a number of years. But I think the uni down
buzzing
there has
now.
grown really
Yeah.
a lot, and it's I think 3 times the size
Yeah.
of what it was when I was down there. So I think it's less where you go to die; it's where you go to see your grandparents die. Maybe
That's just my opinion, by the way. So let's just sort of
Let's move away from Bournemouth.
let's move away from
Good idea.
Tell us about the charity work you've done, because
Yeah.
I know from getting to know you a little bit more recently that you've been going to do driving to Ukraine with supplies, but you've previously done that in Romania. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so I mean it was a bit of an epiphany moment actually that led to me making the decision definitely not to go into law. I'd become involved with Romania, or a guy who'd gone out to Romania previous year. It was this is 2 or 3 years after the revolution. Ceausescu had been deposed, and there was a lot of stuff needed doing out there. The country needed help, and that's not being big-headed. It's not saying we did it. There was a lot they needed a lift up with, so that they could enable themselves to get back on the right track. And we set up a charity in the. Or it wasn't even a charity at that point. It was a society, the Bournemouth Romanian Charity Appeal or something. It was like that, and we did some projects, and we took in the end I think it was 17 nurses from what was then called the Nursing 2000 degree, which was quite new around that time, and they went out and they were essentially teaching the local medical staff how to do things like give injections without breaking a needle. So some of the basics, and also we had we took a disused classroom from the UK that was going to literally be burnt as firewood, got it on the back of a TNC lorry, and they deposited it in Suceava in the northeast of Romania for us, and we went out and rebuilt it. And it was used in the grounds of what I'm going to use the term mental institute, because that's what they were like. They were literally the pictures you see of mental institutes in films of people being handcuffed to beds and wandering around in their pajamas and literally shit on the walls. That was what this place was like. So actually, for them, having this education centre in their grounds was like, wow. And that, literally, it was going to be used as firewood. So yeah, but kudos to TNC as well for sticking it on the back of one of their lorries and taking it out there. But what happened was in the midst of all of that, to go back to your question, David, is I was sat there not knowing whether I still wanted to do the degree. I was supposed to be going back to the UK to a 1-year placement with a law firm in Enfield, where I'm from originally, and actually realising that I wanted to do the degree and finish it, but I didn't want to go into law. And it was then I came back and I sat with my tutor who set me up with this placement and said, I'm not going to do it. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I'd like to actually set up a charity and run the charity for a year within Bournemouth Uni, where we provide further funding for relief and trips for students to go on. And he kind of went, okay, how does that work? So we did it on the hoof, really. You know, we found a little office in the middle of Bournemouth University. They said, yeah, have it. We set that up as our epicentre. We arranged a whole number of events. We had a fashion show. I arranged a fashion show. Look at me. I arranged a fashion show.
We need to see footage of it.
Yeah, pictures or not true.
We raised £10,000 on that day. You know, it was that big a thing then. It was like Ukraine was this time last year, really, and like unfortunately what's going on in Gaza and places like that at the moment, that's now taking centre stage from Ukraine, and that's what happened with Romania. So we really wanted to keep it front and centre for at least some people, and it was great because I think for 5 years after that the university funded 2 placements for students from PR and marketing and then business operations or something to run the charity for their placement year. So it had a bit of a legacy.
Where does your passion come from to do something like that? Anything in particular that drives you, motivates you?
I don't know. I don't like seeing people being abused by people in power. It probably comes to something quite that simple, you know, and people, you know, giving someone the opportunity to overcome that, or not really explain that very well. I couldn't. It's just something innate that
It's just in you.
Yeah, it just is, and it's in my kids. You know, they're the same. They want to do things like this, and you know. And
was it in your family growing up? Were they doing anything in particular, or are you like the first of your generation kind of thing?
I think it's sometimes it's the opportunity that when it's probably in a lot of people, they just don't have the opportunity presented to them to do something about it. For a lot of people, supporting people who are less fortunate themselves is about 10 quid in a pot somewhere, or donations to children in need, or it's that sort of thing, because that's all they've got the opportunity to do. And don't get me wrong, that is absolutely fine. But having the opportunity at Bournemouth, and again, just because last year we got to a point where we built enough of a business and we had people in the business who were very good, that opportunity to drive the minibus, and you know, we didn't go into Ukraine, just to make that clear. It just was too dangerous. But to get to Poland, to pick up refugees to bring back, it was just an opportunity that presented itself.
Was it quite emotional?
Oh, hugely. I mean, there's stories around children going missing in Romania, and literally, and you never know how much these have been embellished. But there was a child who we were told we went into it was like a care home for kids, and literally there were 4 or 5 kids to a cot, and you would, you know, as soon as you put your arms near them, they were like clinging to you, literally, because they hadn't had that level of human interaction. They'd be soiled and everything, you know. And there was one particular child who clearly had, who had brain injuries and things like this. And we were told that basically the Ceausescu government or military had taken him away from his mum and thrown him in a river. And he had survived it and had been brought to the nursery, the care home, whatever it was. And there was some link, so there was something there as well around his mum had seen the pictures of him and had actually, like 3 years later, been reunited with him, which happened while we were out there. That sort of thing. It just make you just sit here and you go, wow, and we're complaining because, you know, the weather's bad, or it just puts things in perspective. And I guess to your point, last year was I play football with a local businessman from Bath, just outside Bath where we live, and he'd seen what was going on out there and he wanted to do something about it, and he'd literally gone out and bought a minibus, and him and his wife had pretty much taken 6 months off the business and were just driving to and from Poland, bringing back refugees, however many were available at that point in time to fit in the minibus. And I was talking to him one day and I said, look, I'm quite interested in doing one of the trips with you, or and we set a date for it, and I was originally doing it with my brother, and brother realised that he was supposed to be doing a triathlon 2 days after we got back, and it was like, well, what if there's a delay or all of this? So I was sat there with Alan, my business partner, we were at a client event up in Manchester actually with the company, and we sat there just as my brother rang me and said, I can't do this, and Alan looked at me and went, well, can I do it? So that's how he got involved, and we then went, okay, well, let's do some fundraising around it, and we had some amazing fundraising efforts from clients, from partners, from individuals who just went, yeah, I want to help you, and we raised a lot of money, and we did the trip, and again there were emotions in there that some of the stories. There was a lady there who was, I guess, 31, 32. She had a little 6-year-old girl. And on the Friday night, we picked them up on the Tuesday morning. On the Friday night, she'd been in her apartment block and had been a knock on the door, and Russian soldiers had basically come in and said, you two out, we need this place for barracks, and kicked them out on the street as a 6-year-old girl. So this is, the need is less because there's less of these stories, but it doesn't mean they're not still going on. So, yeah. Well, sorry, I did say to you, I try not to make you cry, but
no apologies. No apologies.
It's just incredible that there's people out there like you that
give a shit.
That give a shit.
To my point, though, I think there's a lot more people who do give a shit. I genuinely believe there's good in a lot more people, but they just don't have that opportunity. So all I'd say is, if you do get an opportunity to do something humanitarian like that, from your own personal perspective, it was amazing for our mental health. For example, to be involved in something like that, it actually lifts you, even though at the time you're thinking, oh my God, what have these people been through, and how do we actually even communicate with what was 15 in our minibus, 15 people who don't speak English. Well, there was one who did, fortunately, but how do you talk to people who are, they've left their husbands, their brothers, their sons, their grandparents on some occasions back fighting a war so that they can be safe. And how do you motivate them? How do you lift them when you can't even talk their language?
So I think there's such an opportunity for organisations, especially in richer countries, where we reward tenure in a lot of businesses. So I worked at a company where I think it was either 5 or 7 years. If you worked there, you got something crazy like a 12-week holiday, and you were fully paid. Yeah. But I think most people, listening to your point around, if they had the time, they had the ability, they would make a difference. Yeah. If you said, right, rather than that, every year you have a 2 to 3 week window, you're fully paid. Yeah. You choose the humanitarian relief that you give, but in that 3 week window, we're going to put a team together, and that's what you're going to go and do. Yeah. People would jump at it.
Yeah, 100%.
If I had a business and I ran a business and I had the money, I would love to do something like that.
Do you know what I also think? When we all talk about values and benefits and all these things, if that was something that was like part of your package, I think it would just appeal to so many different people.
Honestly,
rather than just you get an extra week holiday.
You get a nice pool table in our office or something like that. I think particularly the next generation. So Generation Z, I hate classifications like this, but it's a marketing classification, so let's use it. Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who I think I'm getting this right, are the current generation pushing into the workforce, so the last 10 years or so, and then Generation Alpha, which is the next group. their interests, their values and things like that, it's really what drives them in their careers. And to, like you say, to be able to go to have a company that went once, 1 week a year, 2 weeks a year, whatever it is, you could do something that really fulfills your values, and they'd be snapping your hand off.
Yeah.
I think it's massive.
I think it goes wider. I mean, I'm a millennial, but I know that the demographic and the age demographic that I'm in, I think they care about it as well. And, that I would be so much more driven to work for an organisation that had that, as opposed to superficially ticking a box that, hey, we plant a tree, or, because behind the scenes, it's different. It's like, how much profit are we making? How much revenue have we driven?
There's always an agenda behind it, isn't it?
Whereas if you're working for a business that's profitable, that doesn't care about how much turnover they're making, but actually when they talk about the work that they do as a business, I mean, we could go into that, but we should probably point out on the podcast, Jeremy is not working. He doesn't lead a charity.
No, I don't.
Jeremy,
you bloody well should create one.
Yeah, but create one, and we're on board.
Story. It's just like,
So, Jeremy, you founded Udder.
Yes.
Tell us about that before we move into your part 2 to go into the work that you do.
Yeah. So throughout my career, I guess it's always been in and around TA, HR. HR initially, then really focusing on TA. Back in 2014, I took a redundancy from AXA, which was my last employed post, as it were, and went. I'm going to call it gun for hire. Going into projects like we talked about DVSA earlier, for example, where I was hourly paid, daily rate, whatever it might be, for a project. But I was me. It was just me. And it was, I guess it got to a point where I was thinking, this isn't fulfilling me anymore. Come in, Alan, at Unleash, in what I think from memory was 2018. Alan was doing some video recording so interviewing people at Unleash at XL, bumped into each other, started talking. He said, can I do an interview with you? So did this interview with him, which was really around the role of tech in HR and these sorts of things. And afterwards he said, do you know what? He said, it's really interesting. We share such similar views on how tech should be used. Maybe we should look at projects together in the future. He said, because he was working by himself, sort of doing exactly the same sorts of projects, which were loosely around TA mainly. But we carried on the conversation, and I think it was the opportunity in 2019, December, he picked up a contract that needed more than one person on it. So he messaged me and said, look, do you want to work on this with me? And I said, yeah. And I think we went 3 days into it, and I looked at him, I went, why don't we just set up a business and do this? And that's literally where it started. I think 4 days later, 12th of December 2019, the Udder Group was born. He'd had Udder as a business name before, and I just said to him, look, this makes sense to keep this because people are starting to talk about Udder, so let's keep the name, and it's a talking point sort of thing, and it has been a talking point in some of our clients. And I think we went from there. We kind of said, okay, let's do things with HR technology, and it literally was that broad. And we've kind of had all these plans around things that we thought the market would like. But then we realised that there were things that the market did want, and they weren't always aligned. So we've honed the service offering over the years as we've gone along, and I think we're in a good place now. We've grown a team. Our team will become 11 as of 4th of January. So the growth is primarily in the implementation work that we do. So implementation, integration, HR ops, SaaS, these sorts of things. So post-purchase of technology, but we also do a lot pre-purchase, so helping companies with RFPs and understanding what it is the problem they're looking to solve ultimately. So that's the sorts of things we do. It's been an interesting 4 years. When you set up a business in 2019 and you're starting to hear stories coming in from Italy about people dying because of a bad cold. And of course, in March 2020, we knew exactly what that bad cold was. So we went into the lockdown. We'd been running 4 months. We cried for a week. and then went, do you know what, we've just got to keep the lights on. And at that level of business, it is literally mine and Alan's lights in the house and everything. So we sort of we put the plans on hold for global domination by the end of 2020, and didn't have a lot of choice really. But what was interesting was during that time there was a lot of companies taking advantage of the furlough and keeping skeleton staff, whereby they were going, okay, we won't furlough you, but what we'll do is we'll get you to work on a project whereby when people come back from furlough or we get through the pandemic, we had no idea how long that was going to be, all of our systems and processes are ready to start recruiting again. And that's really how we kept going in business. We had 2 or 3 projects throughout that year that sort of, we made enough to pay for me and Alan, and we had a marketing person at the time who joined us to do some of the chat talent stuff we were doing, which is not something we necessarily do now. But yeah, we got to the end of 2020 and we'd had to bring on a contractor to fulfill one of the projects we were working on. And I think then we started looking at other avenues, and yeah, I think we saw an opportunity in the implementation space, and that's where we really honed it in 2021, probably for most of 2022 as well. And from that, we recruited Peter Hetherington, who's our head of implementation, who we'd outsourced the implementation to for one of our first 2 projects actually, and he'd done the actual delivery. And yeah, it just really grew from there. And I think now we're at a point where we know what we want to do, we know the work we want to do, and we know the clients we want to work with. And that's a really good place to be going into 2024, and having just gone into the US as well. So,
and all of that just started from an idea you had one day.
Wasn't even an idea.
It
literally was. It's the opportunity.
It's so fascinating when you speak with like founders like yourself, and then it's just like, I just had an idea one day. Like
overnight.
From
just set up.
when we spoke to from Mavita, it's like, we just bashed out an app over a weekend.
Like, Reham?
How do you?
Brilliant.
How do you just? I don't know. But you just had an idea.
I think you sometimes, again, it comes back to opportunity. You see an opportunity and you think this is, and it might have been that we'd gone into that opportunity, done that first project together, thought we hate each other, and actually there's not a business here, and gone our separate ways. But we didn't. So it is about that opportunity, understanding what it is you want to do and who you want to work with. As I say, we got on well, so that's good. That works. That's a key thing with your co-founder. You kind of have to like them.
I guess so.
Well, maybe we should carry that conversation on into a part 2. What do you think, Ames?
That sounds like a fabulous idea.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
No worries. Thank you.